So students, today I'll explain to you second chapter We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together by Gordon Cook and Alanists. This chapter has been taken from the book Hornbill of class 11th. So let me summarize it first. Written by Gordon Cook and Alanists. The story is about a 37-year-old businessman who is the narrator of the story. He has a wife named Mary and two children, Jonathan, aged 6, and Suzanne, aged 7. He and his wife both dream of a voyage around the world on their ship Wave Walker, which is a 23-meter long, 13-ton wooden hull, just like that of a famous Captain James Cook. The whole family started sailing from Plymouth, England on July 1976. The initial phase of the 3-year-long journey was from Africa to Cape Town. It was a pleasant journey. While heading east, along with the two newly hired crewmen, strong waves hit them and their survival became a caution. The story tells us about how they fought each day and survived till the end. So let me start now, and these word meanings of each stanza, if each passage I have written, I have typed in this. Okay. I'll take these first or two passages everywhere like these. Okay, and let me explain this first one first. From in July 1976 to you can see here we could find. Okay, yes, let me start. The narrator, a 37-year-old businessman, along with his wife Mary and two children, Jonathan, age 6, and Suzanne, age 7, went on a voyage on their ship in July 1976. They started from Plymouth, England. They wanted to complete the sea trip around the world just like the one that had been completed 200 years ago by the famous Captain James Cook. The narrator and his wife spent 16 years improving their seafaring skills. They got a ship built professionally, a 23-meter long, 13-ton heavy wooden hull called Wave Walker. They took several months to test it in the roughest of weathers. So, now these two passages from the first leg of our planned 3-year from here to main masts. So the initial phase of the 3-year long journey of about 1,05,000 kilometers passed pleasantly. They sailed down the west coast of Africa to Cape Town. The narrator hired two crewmen before heading towards the east. Why? To tackle the roughest sea, the southern Indian Ocean. And their names were Larry Wiesel, an American, and Herb Sizzler, a Swiss he was. On the second day in Cape Town, they encountered a strong wind which continued for several weeks. A strong wind was not a problem, but 15 meters high waves, which were the height of the mast, worried the narrator most. So, now here from December 25 to jackets and weighted. Yes. On December 25, they had traveled 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. They celebrated Christmas together despite the bad weather. The weather remained the same till New Year's Day, but they hoped for it to change soon. The weather conditions worsened, became worse. On the early morning of January 2, the waves were very huge. They were sailing with a small storm jib at a speed of 8 knots. When the ship was sailing with the huge waves, they could see the huge sea in front of them. The noise of the waves and strong winds was painful for the ears. They dropped the storm jib to slow down the ship and hit a heavy mooring rope across the back part of the ship in a loop. They lashed everything with double force. They put on their oilskins and life jackets, attached lifelines, and went through the life raft drills and waited. So now, this next one, the first indication to this crest. Around 6 p.m., an unpleasant silence rolled over, came out, means it was an indication of a disaster which was about to happen. The wind suddenly dropped and the sky was darker with heavy clouds. A huge cloud was coming towards the stern of the ship. But later, what happened? But later, the narrator realized it was a huge wave. The wave was perfectly vertical and it was twice the height of the previous waves they saw, with the top of the wave looking unpleasant due to its height. So, next one, the roar increased to I felt quite peaceful. Here you can see. The thunder increased and the wave moved toward the stand up. They thought that it would not do any damage, but a huge explosion vibrated the deck. A strong moving stream of green and white water broke over the ship. The narrator's head smashed in the wheel of the ship. He flew overboard and sank below the waves. He accepted that his death was approaching and started losing consciousness. And now he felt quite peaceful. So, from this unexpectedly to I scrambled for the hatch. The narrator's head popped out of water. The ship was about to overturn, but a wave turned her upright. His lifeline jacket was stretched. He grabbed the guardrails and sailed to the ship's main pole. The waves tossed him around the deck. He was injured as his left ribs cracked, his mouth filled with blood, and he had a broken tooth. He found the wheel line the stand for the next wave and waited. There was water everywhere. The narrator could feel water below the ship, but he didn't leave the wheel alone. Suddenly, the front door opened and his wife Mary came screaming that they were sinking. She said, "The decks are smashed and we are full of water." The narrator handed her the wheel and climbed towards the door. So, from this Larry and Herb to surely sink. The crewmen, Larry and Herb, were pumping the water very fast like madmen. The timbers of the ship were broken and were hanging badly. The starboard of the ship had sunk. Clothes, crockery, charts, tins, toys were roaming around in deep water. The narrator swam and crawled to the children's cabin and asked the children whether they were all right. The children replied, "Yes." Shoo, his daughter, complained about a big bump on her head. The narrator didn't pay much attention to it, as his major concern was to save them. The narrator found screws, hammer, canvas, so he went back to the deck. The broken starboard side was letting so much water. If the narrator could not fix the problem, they would all sink in the sea. So from somehow to this that it worked. Yes. The narrator stretched the canvas cloth and secured the waterproof hatch which covered the gaping holes. Some water streamed below, some was now deflected over the side. The hand pump was blocked as rubbish was floating around the cabins and entered it. The electric pump short circuited. As the water level rose, the narrator found two hand pumps had been removed along with a rope, jib, a small boat, and the main anchor. He found another electric pump under the chart room. He connected it to an out pipe and it started working. So from this, the night dragged on with an endless bitterly from to uh, this one. Yes, trying to save us all. Yes. The whole night was about the endless routine of pumping out the water, steering the wheel, and working the radio. There were no replies to their signals sent over the radio as they were in the far away, remotest part of the world. And Shu's head, his daughter, Shu's head was now more swollen, and she had two black eyes with a deep cut in her arm. When upon being asked, when he asked uh, his daughter what's happened, why she didn't tell him about her injuries earlier, then she said that she didn't want to worry him as he was trying to save all of them. So next one, by morning on Jan 3 to this engine out of action. The water level was under control by the morning of January 3. So all of them took 2 hours rest in rotation. But there still was a leak somewhere below the waterline. Upon checking, the boat rib structure was badly broken down till the base of the ship. The whole section of the starboard was held together with a few cupboard partitions. The ship's condition was so bad that it would not take it till Australia. The narrator checked the charts and calculated that there were two small islands a few kilometers to the east, and one of them was Isle Amsterdam, which was really, in fact, a French scientific base. Their only hope was to search and reach that island, but only if the wind and sea do not cause any further damage, as their chances were less. The wave had destroyed the ship's auxiliary engine, means main engine, it was damaged. So now on January 4 to was again desperate. After 36 hours of continuous pumping on January 3, the water was only a few centimeters left to be pumped out. But they still had to pump out the water which was coming in. They could not set sail on the main mast. They hoisted the storm jib and sailed towards the two small islands. They had their first meal in 2 days, some corned beef and cracker biscuits found by Mary. The rest period was short lived as black clouds built up around 4 pm. The wind was now 40 knots and the sea was getting higher, means sea waves were getting higher. The weather got worse and worse, and by the early morning of January 5, the situation was totally bad. So from when I went in to comfort the children too, we both felt the end was very near. When the narrator went to comfort his children, his son asked him whether they were going to die. He tried to assure him that they would make it somehow. His son replied that they were not afraid to die, Papa, till they all were together. And this filled the narrator with a determination to fight back. He made efforts to protect the weakened starboard side. He used an improvised sea anchor made of heavy nylon rope and two 22-liter plastic barrels of kerosene. That same evening, the narrator and his wife sat holding hands and they believed that their end was near. So from here, but wave walker to this one, somehow we had to make it. The ship made it through the storm, and by the morning of January 6, the narrator tried to get reading on the sextant. He worked with the wind speeds, drift, and current and calculated their position. They were in 150,000 kilometers area of ocean looking for a 65-kilometer wide island. While the narrator was still thinking, his daughter Shu joined him and she was in pain. The left side of her head was swollen and her blackened eyes had narrowed down to slits. She gave him a card which she had made herself. On the front of the card was a cartoon image of her parents with words written about them being funny people and how they made her laugh. On the inside of the card, she told them how she loved them both and she thanked them. This made the narrator realize that they had to make it to the island. From I checked and rechecked to this last one, you can see she was right behind him. The narrator rechecked his calculations. They lost their main compass and were using the spare one, which was not corrected for magnetic variations. He estimated the influence of the westerly currents which flow through the Indian Ocean. Around 2 p.m., he went on deck and asked Larry to steer the wheel to 185 degrees. He felt if they were lucky, they would see the island by 5 p.m. Then he went below and slept. He woke up around 6 p.m. and it was dark outside. He thought that they might have missed the island. He started worrying about how they would tackle the westerly wind more as the ship wasn't capable to sail more. His son came and asked him for a hug. His daughter followed him. Means the same thing she did. Now from this why am I getting a hug now to that the most beautiful island in the world. Now he asked that why he was getting a hug. His son replied that he was the best daddy in the world and also called him the best captain. Then the narrator replied that he was afraid. Shu told him that they had found the island which was as big as a battleship. Then the narrator rushed to the deck and gave a sigh of relief. They could see the complete outline of Isle Amsterdam. There was a bleak piece of volcanic rock in front of them. It had a little vegetation. It was the most beautiful island in the world. So now we anchored offshore for the night to who was not afraid to die. This last passage now. They moved the ship at some distance from the shore, and next morning, 28 inhabitants of that island, Amsterdam Island, helped them to move on the shore of the land. As he felt the land again on his feet, under his feet, he thought of his crewman and his wife. He also thought of his 7-year-old daughter who was injured badly. She had to go through 6 minor operations to remove the blood clot in her head. His son, who never gave up and was never afraid to die. Okay, students, bye. Jai Hind.